Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Certainly appreciate it, and want to thank Senate leadership for organizing this press conference. Tomorrow, Laken Riley would have been 23 years old. Her killer should have never been able to be in the U.S., especially after being charged with multiple crimes. Laken's murderer, while he should not have been here, had he been detained, this never would have happened. And her murder is actually the consequence of Biden-Harris open border policies. If you think about the last 4 years, there has been no more litigated issue than our wide open border. And the American people spoke loud and clear on November 5th and entered a verdict. And that verdict was they wanted a secure border and they wanted safety for American citizens. We are listening to the American people, and it seems that some of my Democratic colleagues are also hearing the American people today. They know that their open border policies will not work and that common sense solutions like the Laken Riley Act are needed to keep the safety and security of American citizens at the forefront. I want to start by thanking Representative Mike Collins, who was gracious enough to be with us today. This is Mike's bill. Mike came up with this after her hearing and listening to the devastating impact of Laken being taken from us all too soon, listening to the needs of his constituents, actually trying to find common sense solutions, and bringing forth legislation that would actually achieve that goal. If every member of the House and the Senate actually was responsive to the needs of the people they serve in the way that Mike has been, this would certainly be a better place. Thank you, Mike, for your leadership. Thank you to Senator Budd, who also carried this piece of legislation here in the Senate. His leadership has been tremendous. Last year, when we went down to the floor, not once, but twice, to try to make sure that the Laken Riley Act could get heard, could be put in front of the American people, unfortunately it was blocked by our Democratic colleagues. And if you remember, in the 118th Congress, under Democratic control, the Senate Judiciary Committee did not mark up one single bill related to immigration. That's at a point where we have a wide open border, when we know over 10 million people have come here illegally, when we know that there are over 2 million known gotaways, where we don't know who they are, where they're going, or what their intentions are. In the midst of all of that, they did nothing. But today, because of the leadership of Senator John Thune, Leader Thune, we had an opportunity to change that. So Leader Thune, thank you for doing this. Thank you for putting this on the floor. I also want to thank Senator John Fetterman. John Fetterman stepped up along with all 52 Republicans that co-sponsored this legislation right out of the gate upon entry and put his name on this as well. Common sense solutions to keep Americans safe is what he prioritized and was willing to have the courage to speak up when no one else in his party was. This is a first step in making the American people's voices heard. Now listen, over the next couple of days, you'll see special interest groups try to kill this bill. If you are listening, if you are watching, call your senator today. Make sure they know how important this is. Make sure you know that this is the kind of work you want to see happen. You want to see people coming together and advancing common sense solutions to keep Americans safe and secure. So I say, let's get this done for Laken. Let's get this done so no family has to deal with the unimaginable that her family has been through. And let's make a difference, and let's put Americans first. Thank you. Leader Thune.
I want to thank Senators Britt and Budd for leading this important bipartisan effort that every single Senate Republican supports, and we picked up a few Democrats as well. And I also want to thank Congressman Collins for his leadership in getting this through the House of Representatives with a big bipartisan vote. I discovered I had the privilege of serving with his dad many years ago, a big admirer of his, and so thank you for your leadership. This is something that needs to be addressed. Laken Riley's horrific murder should have never happened. She should still be with us today, and if she was, as Senator Britt pointed out, she'd be turning 23 tomorrow. The individual responsible was arrested not once but twice, but was released by authorities in New York before an ICE detention order could be issued. This legislation is designed to make sure that that never happens again. The Act is also designed to hold federal law enforcement officials accountable if they fail to detain criminals as the law requires, which is a troubling trend that we see across the country today. Now, as it goes to the process, I'm actually very pleased to see that we've got a number of our Democrat colleagues who have changed their tune on this and have allowed us to debate the bill. And quite frankly, I would say that's overdue. We should have passed this last year to ensure that this kind of tragedy never happens again. So allowing us to debate the bill is the bare minimum. But 60 votes on the front end, which is what we saw today, doesn't necessarily guarantee that they will provide the necessary votes on the back end. As the Senate considers this bill, we're going to get a sense early on whether Democrats are serious about working with us to prevent tragedies like this, or if they simply want to play politics with the issue. And let me just say, this is not a comprehensive immigration bill. This isn't even a border bill. It's not comprehensive in either sense. If senators have good faith ideas about how to improve the bill, great. But we are in the lawmaking business here, and we are not going to entertain political showmanship and unrelated efforts that stand in the way of preventing tragedies like this from happening again in the future. So again, thanks to Senator Britt for and her great leadership on this, and for Senator Budd and the work that they've done to ensure that this gets considered in the Senate, and I hope ultimately it gets passed, and that we do what we should have done a long time ago to prevent tragedies like this from happening.
Leader Thune, I just want to thank you for making this a priority. I mean, this is one of the very first votes in the 119th Congress for the Senate, and it certainly reflects the priorities of November 5th and your priorities as well. So I want to thank also my colleague, Senator Britt, for her leadership, who worked this across the aisle within her own conference and has just done a tremendous job. I see this as a father, and as a father of two daughters, and I can't imagine what the family has gone through. And I know many of us have children, and we hope that we never face what this family has faced. Now, I also think, even though this took place in Representative Collins' district, I think about my state of North Carolina and what the sheriffs of all 100 counties, most of them have said to me. They said, every single county in North Carolina is now a border county because of Joe Biden's policies. And so we've seen that, the devastation of those policies in this tragedy that we saw last year. And policies, they have tragic consequences. Laken Riley was a wonderful nursing student with a bright future, and she was murdered by an illegal alien from Venezuela. This killer should have been stopped, but tragically he wasn't. He should have been stopped at the border in 2022, but he was paroled into the country. He should have been detained when he was arrested in New York in 2023, but he wasn't. He should have been detained when he was arrested for shoplifting, but again, tragically, he wasn't. And we can't let something like this happen again. The Laken Riley Act requires ICE to detain illegal aliens who commit theft and shoplifting. And every Senate Republican supports this, including what we saw with the motion to proceed. And again, there's more work to do, as you mentioned earlier. But we're optimistic, and we're going to continue to work on this. And I can't think of a single reason why any senator would oppose the Laken Riley Act.
Well, thank you to Katie. Thank you to Ted for your fortitude, your determination, your resolve in making sure that this bill got to the floor, and then your work in making sure we had bipartisan support on this. This is the first bill that we brought to the floor for a roll call vote. Our new members were down there saying, how do we vote? What do we do? Well, they knew how to vote. They just weren't sure of the process of which to vote. This was the very first time that all of these new members of the Senate had an opportunity to vote. And it was an important vote because it's such a consequential vote. There is so much urgency, and this bill will actually save lives. Now, as we go through the process, as Katie talked about getting this passed, we need to make sure that nothing is done to weaken this bill. You talked, Senator Britt, about people might trying over the weekend to defeat this bill, to weaken it. We are not going to allow that to happen. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that this gets passed in the same strong way that Representative Representative Collins brought this to the floor. So we are encouraged by today. This is a commitment to put American citizens first, not illegal immigrants. And if everything goes as we're working so hard to do, this will be one of the first bills that President Trump signs into law when he takes office on January 20th.
Senator Britt and Senator Budd, Representative Collins, thanks for all the work that you have done for Leader Thune, for bringing this to the forefront. We have a tremendous amount that needs to be done in this session of Congress. But we're still grieving over where America is with illegal immigration based on what's happened in the last 4 years. We have an individual that illegally crossed our border. He was able to cross our border and be paroled into the country because of overwhelming numbers. This would not have happened if the numbers were manageable, if we were detaining people, doing their hearings, and then processing and then deporting them, quite frankly. But because of overwhelming numbers, he was paroled into the country, then arrested again, and released. I had someone that asked me this morning, when they asked me what I was voting on today and working on, that was back home in Oklahoma. And I told him about the Laken Riley Act. And I told him what it did, that it was a very simple bill that dealt with someone who illegally came into our country and then committed crimes after that they were here, that they should already be removed. Their very first statement to me was, isn't that already illegal? Isn't that already against the law? And I said to them, it is amazing and disappointing that we as a nation need to pass a bill to say to this and every future administration, and quite frankly the previous administration, this should never happen again. It shouldn't have happened in the first place, and we don't want any president in the future ever to just turn their head as the current president has done on the border and said that doesn't matter. Because of Laken Riley and her family, this most certainly matters. So this is a first small step to be able to get control of our border and to be able to make a clear statement. There are many more steps to go. And clearly President Trump is going to enforce the law. He's made that very, very clear. But for Laken Riley's family, we hope this brings some sense to them of purpose for a meaningless murder that happened to their daughter. So that's our prayer. This is the first step with the process vote today. There are many other steps to be able to go through in the next week, and we anticipate getting this passed, getting it over, and getting it signed.
Thank you, Leader Thune. Appreciate the few minutes to speak to you. Senator Britt, Senator Budd, thank you. I appreciate the help over here. You know, I think I want to take just a quick minute and give you a different tact on this. You know, we have a criminal thug that came across the border illegally. Him and his brother. Both of them got paroled, got sent on their way, taxpayer dollars. Sent them to New York, Sanctuary City, put a roof over their head, gave them clothes. Taxpayers been feeding them. Instead of them going out and getting a job and try to assimilate to our country, what'd they do? Oh, they brought their trade with them. What is that trade? It's being a criminal. Like so many criminals that got away. And what did they do? They started out with minor level crimes, endangering a child, shoplifting. The more that they get away with and the more we let these criminals go, it just emboldens them. And they step it up, and they step it up to the point where Jose Ibarra murdered a young 23-year-old girl, a 23-year-old student who had her whole life in front of her. They didn't come over here to assimilate. No. They came over here to continue what they were doing when they were back home when they get kicked out. And that's to be a crook and a criminal. That's why the Laken Riley Act is so simple. Right now, local law enforcement can't contact ICE unless it's a major crime. Are we going to let every illegal criminal that comes over here, who already broke the law by breaking into our homes, our country, are we going to let them just continue to escalate the crime to the point where it gets to murder? Oh, by the way, now we'll arrest you. No. We need to kick them out with these low-level crimes. We need to go ahead and detain them, process them, and deport them. And I want to leave you with one last quick thing. Laken Riley's whole life, all she wanted to do was save lives. That's it. And when her parents told me if we could do anything, pass anything here that might make to where no other family has to go through this, then we should pass it without any problem, and they would be honored to put her name on it, because her name will live forever, and her name will continue to save lives across this country by making our community safer. So I appreciate what y'all are doing in the Senate. This is a bipartisan piece of legislation, and you saw it had bipartisan support. Had it in the House, and it's got it in the Senate. And I can't wait to get this thing on President Trump's desk and have him sign it into law. Thank you for letting me speak. Thank you.
Yeah, questions? Yes, sir.
So I have a question for you and just what universe of amendments would you be willing to consider? Are you willing to amend the bill, and is there a certain period of time which you're going to allow that conversation to go before you find a closure on the bill?
Do you want to take that? I mean, obviously, certainly open to that. We have been talking with our colleagues in the Republican conference, our colleagues across the aisle, and trying to get an idea of what a universe of amendments looks like. One of the things that Leader Thune said earlier, which was, this is not a comprehensive bill, so we're not interested in making it that. This is very targeted, and so we want to keep it in that realm. So amendments that deal with that are something that we're looking for, but as far as process goes, I need to hand that to you. Okay, who knew? Who knew?
Could you talk about what has been a sea change in Democrats? So Chuck Schumer did not bring this bill up and try to pass it.
No.
Amend it. Now he's talking about supporting bringing it up.
Yeah, he voted for it. He voted for it.
Talked about voting to bring it up, and now he wants amendments. When a lot of times he brought up bills and didn't have amendments. I'm wondering if you see the election and what happened, that the Democrats are getting.
I bet every one of my colleagues want to crack at that question. Look, this just shows that the Democrats, how they've said they've had a communication problem on this issue, they haven't. They're just wrong on this issue, and they know it. And so what this shows you, I mean, I said it earlier, but you have the Senate Judiciary Committee that are supposed to be marking up bills that are going to make our country more safe and secure when it comes to immigration, that refine that process and make it work. And in the entire 118th Congress, they didn't mark up one bill, not one. And when we asked for this bill to be marked up, we said, let's do it. Bring it forward. Let's make it better. Let's talk about it. They wouldn't do it. And so we were forced to take it to the floor. Senator Ted Budd took it first. He tried to get it on the floor. They blocked it. I took it next with Senator Lindsey Graham. They blocked it. And so it's interesting now that they're willing to have this conversation. I certainly welcome it because the American people deserve it. But the truth is, we wouldn't be in this posture if it weren't for the Biden-Harris administration and their open border policies. I mean, in the first 100 days that Biden came into office, he did 97 executive orders undoing the work that President Trump had done. They continued to turn a blind eye. You heard Senator Lankford say it about abuse of parole, the Presidential Parole Authority. There have been numbers put forth in the Judiciary Committee, actually by Senator Lindsey Graham, saying that both President Obama and President Trump use the Presidential Parole Authority on average about 5,600 times a year. And yet you look at what President Biden was doing, and he's paroling people close to 1 million people a year on average. It is completely and totally being misused, and Democrats know it. They absolutely know it. They know this is not sustainable. They see what's happening from coast to coast. You can't walk in one community that we serve where someone doesn't talk to you about a child, a cousin, a brother, a sister that died of a fentanyl overdose. You start hearing stories like Lake and Riley, like Rachel Morin, like Jocelyn Nungary. One story is one too many, but they have become countless and way too consistent under the Biden-Harris administration. And I mentioned it earlier, y'all, but think about it. This has been the topic that we have discussed more than anything over the last 4 years. The American people had a real opportunity to hear from both sides, and then not just hear it, but they felt it. They felt it in their communities, and unfortunately, too many felt some of the dangers in their home. And they ultimately said enough is enough on November 5th, and they want change and they want action. And for too long, you have people that sit up here and talk and talk and talk and talk and then do nothing. And what I want you to take away from today is Republicans are now in charge of the House, of the Senate, and soon to be the White House. The days of talking are over. The days of action are now. We understand what the American people deserve. We know that they deserve better than what they've gotten. And under Leader Thune and his leadership, we're going to be moving things forward. But I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, I want to make just a quick comment on that, and this will be brief on it. That you, not to correct, but you made the statement and said for Leader Schumer, he said he could not bring it up. He would not bring this bill up. If he would have brought this bill up, this is what we would have seen on the floor. We had an open debate, and we would have passed it. The House passed it last year. Leader Schumer would not bring this up, could not bring it up.
Yeah.
Do you think that you actually need to have an amendment process on this bill in order to get 60 votes? We've heard from a number of Democratic senators. Just this week, you started with no Democratic co-sponsors, and within 24 hours, you had Senator Fetterman and a number of other senators have said that Democrats have said they would support this in its current form. Do you think that an amendment process is necessary on this bill, or can you pass it with 60 right now?
Well, I think that my Democratic colleagues have heard the American people. And so I think that they understand that we need action now. And so it would be my thought that we could likely pass this right now. If people keep their word and people are true to their constituencies and they actually put the needs of them first, it would be my hope that we could pass it right now. We're always up for improving and taking a look at it. And so that's what we'll be doing and making those assessments moving forward.
Last question.
Senator, what's your response to critics who have due process objections to the bill, saying that it would be the intention of those who are not just convicted but arrested for crimes, as well as the fact that the bill has no sort of exclusion for minors?
Yeah, so if you think about it, when you come across the border, let's say you're seeking asylum, what is actually mandatory right now is for you to be detained while that process moves forward. So this does not take away any due process. So if you have an immigration claim or if you have a claim in criminal court, you have an opportunity to see those claims through. This does not halt either one of those processes, so you would be able to continue both of those. I know that there's been some misinformation about that out there. And then always Section 236 of the INA allows for you to challenge something that you believe is a wrongful detention. So there are things in place for that, but no due process is taken away from the processes that exist before them. So look, if you think about this, you're coming across the border already illegally. You take a look at what's happening in our nation, and you look at repeat offenders. And so if you're detained, if you commit a crime, you need to be detained and see that through. So they'll be given due process, though. Absolutely. Thank you.